Welcome to the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. I'm Shannon Kinney-Duh, creator of AFreeSpiritLife.com.
And I'm Ashley Walburn, owner of Home Holistic. And together, we are bringing you the Mindful Mama Movement,
the podcast, community, and retreats for women in all stages of motherhood. Mindful mothering is about nurturing your heart and soul while you nurture your children. It's about consciously awakening to your inner wisdom and being peacefully present as a mama, no matter where you are on your journey. From discovering your newborn to loving and accepting the wonderful people who've left your nest.
The Mindful Mama Movement is bringing women together from across the world to celebrate the imperfect journey of motherhood.
Our movement is empowering mamas to be authentic and to live inspired lives. We are so happy you're here.
I'm growing, I feel like I'm blooming. I'm waiting for anyone there to tell me, show me. Let's go there to a place where I hide so you can pour this blindfold from my eyes and I can finally feel open your heart.
This is the Mindful Mama Movement podcast, episode number 3. Before we start the show today, we just wanted to thank all of you who are going to iTunes and leaving your ratings and your reviews. You are helping us reach women from across the world, and you're helping us grow the movement. And you can still go to iTunes and leave your ratings and your reviews. And when you do that, you will be entered into some great giveaways. If you are listening to this podcast when it comes out, we are launching officially October 16th. We're having a really great party locally, but we're also going to be on the Mindful Mama Movement group Facebook page that day at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. At that time, we're going to be drawing names of all you amazing women who are leaving us reviews, and you're going to be entered into so many great prizes, and we'll be announcing the winners that day on Facebook live video. So go to iTunes, leave us a review, and then send us an email. Let us know that you did it. It's info@mindfulmamamovement.com, and hopefully you'll be one of our winners. Thank you to all of you for your support, for your encouragement. We so appreciate you, and we just can't wait to continue to share this Mindful Mama Movement with you. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, it's Ashley, and today I'm so excited that I get to interview Shannon. And last week you heard Shannon interview me and just get to know me a little bit better. And I just feel so excited that I know Shannon really well, but I get to ask all the questions I haven't gotten to ask before. So let's get started. Are you ready?
I am. I think so. I think I like asking the questions more, though.
So let's just start with you telling us a little bit more about yourself. Like, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Well, I'm a Midwestern girl at heart. I was born in Sioux City, Iowa, and I'm the oldest of 3. I have a brother and a sister. We had a really nice childhood. I mean, we've had ups and downs for sure, but the early years, I remember, it was very simple. It was like raking leaves and lots of winters with forts and snow forts. And we didn't have any horses like you, but we just lived in a neighborhood where we walked to school. It had the alleyways in the back. And I just remember like every summer it was just, you were gone. Like you just had to be home by dinner, and we would ride our bikes through the alleys and we'd play flashlight tag. And I just remember that being a big part of my time during those early years. My parents were really young, and my mom was 21 and my dad was 22 when they had me. And wow. They were in college and decided to get married right away when they found out I was coming along. And so I mention that only because we moved around a lot. I think at one point I counted, like I lived in 18 houses or something, apartments, duplexes, all throughout my until I went to college. And I think partly it was because my parents were always struggling financially. And we just, they just were struggling and growing up.
Yeah,
And
together.
yeah. And so I lived in Iowa until I was about 12. And eventually we came to Overland Park, Kansas, where I went to high school and college in Lawrence. And I I think the messages from my childhood were lack. It was kind of like we never had enough, and we moved into a neighborhood when I was in that critical eighth grade year with having to make new friends, and it was very much what do you call it? Just a high end neighborhood, I guess, and I just didn't
Yeah.
feel like we fit in. And it just felt like, everyone else always had other stuff that we didn't have. And that just kind of became part of my healing journey as I started to grow up and learned that I always kind of felt like I wasn't good enough at things or I wasn't, very good. And then eventually, I started to find myself in college. I actually was a broadcast news major for a couple of years,
Oh, how great.
which I hated the news. I hated
Mhm.
reading the newspaper. I hated watching the news. But I was trying to find something creative. I did love storytelling. I loved communicating. I knew that way back then. And so eventually, that wasn't creative enough for me. And I got a degree I was a film major, of all things. So you probably don't even know that, Ash.
No, I never knew.
But what the reason I'm telling you that is so when I graduated, I moved to Boulder, Colorado. I had been a camp counselor. I'd fallen in love with the mountains, and I had friends there. And I found a job teaching. It was a girls empowerment program, and it was teaching video and documentary filmmaking. And it was like the perfect job for me to start learning as I started mentoring teens who weren't feeling good enough, who were kind of, really struggling with self esteem. I started to see what could happen when they wrap their minds or hands around doing something they felt empowered by, doing something creative, doing something that scared them, doing something they felt they couldn't do. I started to see the effects of that, and it really made me look at myself.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that how did that affect you?
Yeah, so immensely, because I knew inside of myself I felt this like longing, and I think a part of that is your 20s, but the early 20s, I just felt like this seeking, like I wanted desperately to know who I was, know what my purpose was, and I knew it had to be connected to creativity or art in some way, but I just didn't have that belief in myself. I was consumed by self-doubt. And yes, as I saw these girls, we'd have these it was such a cool program. So we're teaching girls how to use video cameras, and they'd become directors, and they would, write their own stories. And I would ask, who wants to be the director today? And this is like teenage girls. And most of them were so shy, none of them would raise their hand. But then as I started teaching them those skills and they found that confidence, then you'd ask, the following couple weeks, who wants to be the director? And then all the hands would go up. And I just remember that was really impactful for me because I I wanted to be that bold, I wanted to be brave like they were. I could see it
Hmm.
happening. And so I did. I met a group of women who kind of were on that similar path. We were kind of looking to reconnect to our creativity. We read the book The Artist's Way, and that really taught us that we are all creative. And it was just started that healing process for me of as I was growing up and finding my own life purpose. So
Do you feel, like you just said, like that we are all creative? Do you feel that we are all creative?
I do. Back then, I didn't. Back then, I would cringe if I were to say I was creative or an artist. I would be too embarrassed. It wouldn't even like feel like authentic for me to say that because I just wrapped my mind around this idea that those people were creative. They were born that way with all that super talent, and that wasn't me. which is so silly because as I look back on my childhood, my mom was an art teacher. She was my art teacher in elementary school. We were always doing creative things, but I think, again, going back to that move, my parents and their struggles and in their just growing up years and not really being around so much, I felt a lot of times I was just figuring stuff out on my own. I just didn't have that same belief until I started, meeting people that gave me a new message. And so, yeah, I absolutely believe we're creative. And I think, way back when I started that or was running that girls empowerment program, it's led me to, that's one of the biggest passions in my life, is to help women reconnect to their inner artist. Because I do believe we all are creative and have a longing to express it in some way, but maybe just don't know how to tap into it.
Yeah, I've always felt like for myself that I was like an artist that got kind of shoved down. And so that traditional school kind of dissipated my creativity. Like, you're not doing this project correctly. And I was like, no, my way is okay too. But I feel like so many of us, especially adults, have been taught for so long that we're not, it's not normal unless you're an artist to express yourself in a creative way.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it breaks my heart, honestly, when I look back, because I feel like had we connected and stayed connected to that as young children, I kind of feel like I spent 20 years of my life recovering that place of me that I had, that we all have when you see in young children. I see that so much even in my 5-year-old still. And I see the difference even in my 8-year-old, being in school for 3 years now. And he goes to a school that allows him to be creative, but it's something happens where it's just social norm, where we just get taught right and wrong. And, it's around that second grade year where we're taught the sky is blue, the grass is green, and you color in the lines. And unless you find a mentor or someone else who believes differently, most of us are, that's why adults draw at a third grade level. You ask an adult to draw, they're going to draw a stick figure for the most part, because we stopped nurturing that side of us years and years ago for that simple fact that we can't do it like they do. And we're not doing it the right way, as you mentioned. And so what I learned is that I always had this idea that you had to draw realistically to like really call yourself an artist.
Right.
When you redefine the word artist or creativity and you realize that really what that is making space in your life to do something that brings you to the present moment. That thing that where you just lose sight of time and you feel good doing it. Like, that's what I believe creativity is. And we have to give ourselves permission to make space for it in our life, because we all have healing around that. We all have memories of that one teacher or that one moment where we felt like, oh, I'm not as good as she is at this. I think I'll just close the door on this part of my, you know what I mean? And yeah. So for you, how do you express your creativity in your own life now? How do you see yourself? Here, I'm turning the tables again.
I know. Ooh, look at you interviewing me. And I think with like doing projects with my kids, and just not caring, that like we're working on a project and not, and I would say a lot of times it'll start with like a school project that we need to create something for a book that they read or for an experience that they had. And that you're limitless, and the materials that you use and what you wear to do it. And I just always have fun. And then we generally end up doing something completely different because we've got stuff out and we've gathered. Like, I remember one time we were doing like you had to do some kind of a diagram, but you were kind of limitless in how you did it. But like creating a setting from a story. And this was like third grade for one of the boys. And so we decided to use everything edible. And so we got like food to create like this whole like storyboard. Um, and like non-perishables. We didn't use like an orange slice. Um, but it was just really fun. And like they always love those projects. And I always see them like loving to get dirty and loving to make up games. Like that's one of their favorite things to do is to make up a game and then play it. And so that I just feel like we all feel more like our authentic selves when we are playing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
What would you say to like moms or even children that kind of have experienced what you and I have both experienced, like this botched creativity that needs to be re-nurtured? What would be your advice?
well, I think for one, since we're speaking to moms in particular, something magical happens when you have children. You start to see life through those new, fresh eyes. And when you pay attention to that and you see how they discover their world around them through play, through open-ended exploration, and they don't have rules. They're as you said, limitless. They have this high, intense curiosity. And so what I say is, reconnect to that place of curiosity. We see it as we're fearful to do something. We don't want to make a mistake. The old way is to let that fear keep us from trying something new, from failing, from making a mistake, from looking silly. And so what I would encourage anyone is I know that the majority of us have that longing inside of us to, even if you feel you're a creative person, to just have more time to express it, to more time to dedicate to it. But for many of us, we haven't touched crayons or paints since we were in kindergarten. And there is, if you really pay attention, there can be this unexpressed place in you that is just trying to be heard. And so I think the first thing is to, I always say, embrace imperfection, because I know what it's like when you let wanting to do something perfectly keep you from trying something new. And so try new things, sign up for a class, but watch how your kids jump in, especially the young ones, how they just try things with a curious heart. And if you can, instead of think, I'm fearful, I'm afraid to do this, say, I feel really curious. I want to know what's going to happen next. I think I want to try this just because I want to see. And I say throw out the rules. I always say there's no right or wrong way to be creative. And there's no right or wrong way to express yourself. So if this is your first time and you're feeling, it's a sensitive thing to reconnect to that, as you called it, botched creativity, or that feeling of hurt inside of you. It's like, go slow. They have those coloring books now that are super, I think that's why they're so popular, because it gives you that permission to start, to begin, to explore with just the color in a simple way. And, follow your kids' lead. That throwing out the rules is the very first step, I think, to allowing yourself to move forward.
Great. I love that. I love it. And I agree. I just think that when we just give kids stuff, they're so innately creative that they can do it with sticks and dirt and grass, and they'll make a fort or something. And I think it's great when we give ourselves permission to participate in it.
Yeah, and I think I want to add too that, keeping it simple, like you said, can be so rewarding, because it does make you step outside the box. We can get caught up in this Pinterest world of like wanting to do the perfect crafts. You go to the craft store and you see all these amazing things, and you feel like you have to provide all these great supplies for your kids. And but what I've noticed when I get going down that road is when they just have a few things to work with, it's amazing what they come up with, and they think differently. And so a lot of times what I do, and I'll share more about the classes I teach, but we don't use paintbrushes when we paint. We use sticks. We roll acorns. We color with our opposite hand. We use toothbrushes. It's anything to get yourself out of that mindset that this is the right way to do something. It just kind of like aha happens, it just gets you in that place where you are less judgmental and you're more open to see what's going to happen next. And I think that's the same with kids, like just keeping it simple is so helpful.
I agree. So you just said kids. Tell me about your children.
So yes, I have 3 boys. Keston is 8.5. Ashton is 5, almost 6, and Grayson will be 3 actually this month. So they're growing up and keeping me super busy. I stay home with them, but I work around their schedule. So I work from home, and it's always been a dream of mine to do that. So we spend a lot of time together, but Ashton will start kindergarten this year, and I'm actually looking forward to, this will be the first time to have just kind of one-on-one time in the mornings with Grayson. And I never thought I would have boys. I always kind of envisioned I'd be the mom to girls.
Isn't that
And
funny?
yeah, but I couldn't imagine it any other way. I love boys.
Me too. I say a lot of times that I wouldn't have planned having 4 boys. I wouldn't have planned having my last 3 all a year apart, but I wouldn't change it. I couldn't have planned it better.
No, I know when I first found out I was having a boy, I called my sister, and I was just kind of shocked because I just was like, what am I going to do with a boy? And I was always, working with girls whenever I was doing anything growing up. And I said, who's going to watch Annie with me? And she said, well, Matt, who is my brother-in-law, loves Annie. And she's like, but don't tell him I said that. And it was so cute. And so she's absolutely right. My kids will watch Sound of Music with me. They're still at a young age. I can make them. We even watched Little House on the Prairie the other day, and they said they kind of liked it.
My kids used to love Little House on the Prairie, but we watched that a lot.
Oh, good.
When they were little.
Yeah. So yeah, we're loving it with the boys here.
And your husband, Chris, tell me a little bit about how you guys met.
Yeah, so after my stint in Colorado, I was there about 3 years. I was dating someone at the time who wanted to move to Seattle, and that was just too far for me to be away from my family. And I thought, I need a break here, and I'm going to go back to Kansas and just see where that takes me. So I started applying for jobs, and that's when I found my job at Hallmark. It was an art studio that Hallmark provided for free in our community, and I knew the second I saw that job, it was made for me. It was just, there's certain moments in your life where you just have no doubts, and that was one of them. I just was like, this is the one. And now I know why, because Chris had been there for several years previous, and Chris is an amazing artist. He is a designer. He makes kid-friendly environments, play spaces and sculptures. And I think it took us, I started in February, and it took a couple months before we realized that something was there. But once we knew, it was like, that was it. Like, there was absolutely no doubt in either one of our minds that we were made for each other. And I was like, okay, my job here is done. I found my husband, and so we don't even say that we dated. We pretty much just got engaged and got married a year later. And which was really cool because we both were in 5-year relationships when we met, and that were kind of coming to an end. And we just, it's like, I never felt that way. I never thought I never thought of marriage. I didn't want to have kids. It just, nothing, that did not happen for me until I met him. And then it was just like, oh my gosh, I need to mate with him. I
Right?
was just,
I feel the exact same way.
yeah, I know
I
when you
was
were,
like, I have to marry him.
yes. I mean, when you were talking about that last week, I seriously, I felt the exact, I know exactly how you feel because I remember, that kind of courting time and we worked together. So I'd like, oh, just make sure I looked cute and I'd get so excited to see him. And he'd walk back and I swear to God, it's like I felt that throbbing in my uterus. Like I'm just like, I have to make babies with that guy. And so we got married. We were married 5 years before we had kids, though. So we had some fun just being married couple. And then we've been married now 13 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
Well, that's so fun. I love to hear that story. I met a woman earlier this year, and I'll talk more about her later on. But her name's Sue, and she was 80, and she had been married young and then divorced, and said that they were never really in love, and kind of, got married because they were having kids, and it was the time to do it, and got divorced, and started dating this man. And she was like, I was really like, had a career. I didn't need a man. I didn't want to get remarried. And she said, I remember when my current husband kissed me for the first time. And she said, I felt electrified. And she said, I'd never felt that before. And she said, and I felt like I have to see him every single day. Like and she said, I just never felt that way before. And she said, and I got it. I got like, that's how you know this is your life mate.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It was a great conversation. And I loved that this 80-year-old woman is telling me in great detail about her first kiss with her husband. It was so great. It was so great.
I can't wait to hear more about Sue.
You'll hear more about her.
Good.
So you and Chris now have 3 boys together. Do you feel like you guys parent similarly? And how do you negotiate it when you don't? If there's like a disagreement?
I think in the early years, it was just a matter of figuring it out and getting through the resistance, that feeling of like, well, I'm right, you're wrong kind of a thing. Just really trying to have it, just figure it out. I think we're in a really compatible place. We definitely communicate well. We talk, and we probably talk like too much. I mean, we literally talk about everything. And so sometimes, I think that can get in the way a little bit, but for the most part, I think we are compatible. We definitely try to parent from a present place. I mean, really, one thing that I just really attracts me to him is he's very in tune. He's a very busy, he's just been very gifted to get to express his own art in the work that he does. And so from an outside perspective, you think he's busy and he's running from this place to that, but he is such an intuitive person and very in tune, and he picks up on every little detail and kind of pockets it away, So because I'm more often with the kids, and there's a lot of times where he has to work evenings or weekends, that it's hard sometimes to step back into that rhythm. I feel like, we have a certain rhythm, and then he's had to really try to work his way back into the rhythm. But, it's just a matter of being flexible and figuring it out. And so I think for the most part, we do parent similar. I would say I'm probably, if you're going to label it, I'm probably a little more lax because I'm with the kids so much. I've had to learn how to say yes more often and go with the flow of things a little more. And I think he can put the foot down a little bit more than I'm just kind of I soften things a little bit. But yeah, I think we just have found a good rhythm.
Isn't that so great? I feel the same, but we don't talk as much. That when we talk, I do a lot of talking, and my husband does a lot of waiting for me to be done talking. I think that's how he would probably describe that. If I was being honest. What do you? What was your experience like when you became a mother for the first time? Like, what was that like? Pregnancy, childbirth, and how do you feel like that kind of that first experience of becoming a mother has changed you or not?
It was a really good pregnancy. I've been very fortunate, after that 14-week period of just complete. I remember feeling, my friend said, it feels like you have mono. And I totally remember like having to go to work. And there were some times where I couldn't even tell them I was leaving. I was that tired. Like I would just walk out the door and try to make it home and then sleep the whole weekend. Like, I had to go through that stage, but in general, the pregnancy always felt really good. And gosh, I think, yeah, that's when I found you. So doing prenatal yoga was super helpful. And I think I mentioned before that, I tend to like to research everything. I like to know stuff. I want to figure everything out. So I wanted to know exactly what I should eat and, what I shouldn't. And, I was kind of probably a little militant about some of that stuff, which we probably all are with the first.
Yeah. I'm always amazed when I meet like a laid back first time mom.
Yeah.
But I'm like, who are you? How did you get to be here?
Seriously.
I do feel like most first time moms are more like that, like absorbing everything. One mom said to me years ago, like, how do I know that I'm eating perfectly? And I said, oh God, well, you don't, and nobody will. But she was like, how do I get 100 grams of protein a day? What's the best sources? And that I feel like that is a lot of how most of us are.
It is. And I think you have to go through that on your own at the same time. I think it's so wonderful to find mentors, mothers who have had a few kids to really like help you find that balance, and to just relax a little bit into it. And but once I had Keston, he's the baby that he was afraid to come out.
Yeah.
He's my cautious one, and he took 2 days. So we had an extremely long labor. I went 27 hours. And then it just stalled, and, we just waited and waited. And finally, he was born naturally after 2 days and 3.5 hours of pushing. And but Chris and I still remember. I mean, he came out with a scared look on his face, and he's just... I think that with each of our babies, I really see how their personalities are reflected of their births. And he's taught me a lot about facing my own fears because he's always about his own timing. And that's what I learned with that birth. He wasn't coming till he was ready. And he's always been that way. He's not going to talk in a big group until he's ready. He's not going to, go to gymnastics class without holding onto my leg until several years down the road when he's ready. But he always finds that moment when he's ready. So he really taught me to relax, to trust, to let him open up in his own way. And that took some practice for me, but it's been a huge lesson for me also. And that's probably what I learned the most about mothering, is learning how to trust my own instinct, my own intuition. I felt the desire to have him close. I wanted to sleep with my baby. I wanted to nurse until they were ready to wean. I wanted to be with them as much as I could. And so I had to find a way to be comfortable with that, because before I did kind of look outside for answers. And that was a really defining moment for me to just be more firm and to say, no, doesn't feel right. Then I'm not going to do it. And
right.
Yeah. So that's how mothering has changed me. It's just given me the confidence that I think I was lacking for a long time.
Yeah. Do you feel like you noticed that with your other two children? Because they both came into the world very differently also, that you had 3 very different births. Do you feel like Ashton's birth, that was quick and then
Yes.
tricky, is similar to his personality and kind of needs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, seriously, Ashton was 41 weeks and, everything was going great with that birth. And the short version of the story is my water broke, and 15 minutes later, I thought I was going to have him in the car. And I tried to hold him in as best I could until the hospital, where they told me he was breech and he was going to come out as a C-section baby. And Ash was there with me, my doula, who handed my husband, I think, the camera.
Yeah,
so he could
I
take some
remember
pictures.
running down to the car and getting everything. Yeah.
I mean, even when you're not in the room with the birth, you're still helpful. And yes, I just remember you just being there for me though. And Ashton, he is the most laid back kid. I imagined him inside, like laying in a hammock. Because his bottom was coming out first. And so if you imagine a kid is just like chilling, and he didn't want to come out. It's 41 weeks. He's going to wait till the very last minute. But when he wants to come out, he wants it right now.
Right.
And he's got this fiery personality. He's super, super laid back. He's the middle kid. He's a double Libra. So Libras are just all about balance and, don't want to cause a lot of conflict. But eventually they have their blow up moments, and that's Ashton. He's just super fiery, and that's just what I see with his birth. And then Grayson is the physical kid. He knew how to ride a bike at 18 months. He knew how to birth. He was just going to swim right down, and he was my VBAC baby, and it was kind of that full circle. Really talk about facing fear. It was such a healing birth for me from all the other experiences I had. And yes, he just is that kid that just knows how to do things. He watches and he does it. And that's kind of what his birth was like. Fast and easy and to the point.
Right? Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Why
exactly.
would we wait? I love it. I love it. I remember with Ashton's birth, talking to you on the phone, and the plan was for me to come and be with you, and I could hear that your labor was progressing super fast. And I said, I think we should go to the hospital. And you said, I thought we were going to labor at home as long as possible. And I said, we have. It's time to go.
Oh my gosh. See, and I don't even remember that because I was like, oh my, once that happened, I was like, if it's going to go on like this, I can't do this for hours, like I did before. It was 27 hours and now it's 15 minutes. I mean, just so opposite. And I think since we're talking about it and talking to moms, I think one of my greatest passions too is, that's in our Facebook group, it comes up frequently about women who've had a C-section or who've had a birth that wasn't what they expected or I just feel I had those same feelings. It took a lot of healing. It really took me almost 2 years to heal from Ashton's birth, because I always wanted to have a natural birth, and just, the images I had in my mind just didn't play out the way at all what I expected. And, I just want to remind women that, I think our babies really do, come into this world in the way they need to come into this world. And it's okay to give yourself that time to grieve the birth that you didn't have or the birth that was different for you. And, just to stay open for, what's to come. And I'm sure you talk to moms all the time, Ash, about that. But it's, for me, when I had that C-section and then not knowing if I would get to have a VBAC, it was just such an empowering experience to go through. And I'm just really happy that I really got to experience 3 totally different births. And it's, I just want women to remember that it's okay. Whatever birth you've had, it's okay. And what would you say to that?
I would say just really similar. I think that when we're prepared and we're informed, then we can make kind of the most optimal birth preferences. Like, this is what my dream is. And sometimes that happens. And so I think, plan for what you really want, but have no expectations of anything going that way. Mm-hmm. It generally does. I mean, but what I do feel like I see is moms who are really informed, have, like they're a good team. Don't hire an OB who does primarily high risk babies, that does mostly inductions and C-sections. If you're wanting a natural birth, like research and spend the time and find your team that everybody, is willing to support you in what you really want. And then also realistic that sometimes things change, that, Ashton for Shannon's, at her previous appointment 3 days before, his head was down. And like at 41 weeks, that just doesn't change. It just never happens. But that we have to know that that baby moved into a breech position because that's the way he needed to be born. And that really trusting this process of birth, it doesn't disappoint us very often.
Yeah, I think the releasing expectation is huge, and I think that's again, what I'm learning as a mom, from the moment you give birth to every single day. We try and grasp, trying to control the outcome of what we want our children to do, but ultimately it's not something we can necessarily control, and we have to be able to adapt and be flexible every day.
Yeah, and then we're really present. I mean, I think that's really what we're doing on the Mindful Mama movement, is that like eating perfectly is awesome. Having a natural birth that, with very little pain, like, wouldn't that be amazing? But also that, like, what is happening, we don't want to miss. And so even if there's something happening that isn't the way we thought, that our kids, I swear, all 4 of my kids, I couldn't have written their story. Like, they are just so different than each other. And I have 4 boys. That I feel so grateful that I'm on this journey of letting them be who they are without having expectations of them being like their brother or them being like my dream of a child. And for me, like, birth is my first greatest teacher of mothering.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
Well, that is fun to be on the same page. Tell me about yoga for you, and just like what brought you to yoga, what guided you to become a teacher, and how it's affected your life, your parenting, your relationship with yourself.
So I discovered yoga in college. I think I was a senior, and I read something that was in like the rec center description, and I had no idea what really yoga was, but I read about it and it sounded interesting. And so I asked my roommate to join me for a class, and for that hour and a half, we literally laughed the entire time. And that kind of laughter that, like, you're trying so desperately to hold in, and you want to be quiet, like at church, and everyone's staring at you, but you just have like those drips of just, our eyes were watering, and we did it for the entire class. We should have just left, but whatever, we stayed in the class. The teacher was very kind, and I think we just felt embarrassed, but the funny thing is I just remember she had us like rolling like an egg back and forth on our backs. And every time I'd roll and see my friend Jenny's face, and we'd roll back, and we just were dying laughing. And so that was my first introduction to yoga, but maybe because I was feeling so happy, I just fell in love with it, and I continued. What I realized is that, man, I was kind of uptight. I used to carry so much tension in my head and my shoulders and put a lot of pressure on myself. My mom used to joke that she'd have to tell me to stop doing my homework. I was just that, I just was driven, and I just, focused, and I carried that tension. And so yoga for me, instantly, I started to feel, wow, that what happens when you find that inner calm, that peace, when you can let that stuff go and not carry it with you. And so I continued, and I took classes, and, fast forward, I had met Chris. I was working full time but I instantly knew I had to get trained to be a teacher. It just was my calling. It felt right to me. So I soon after that went to part-time, and I took my training at the Temple of Kriya Yoga in Chicago, which was an amazing program. And they have a home study program too that we'll share that in the show notes if you want to look it up. But it was just, I remember, in fact, I'm going to age myself, but my training was all on cassette tapes.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
They
gosh.
sent my introduction on a cassette tape, and I instantly felt like I was home. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It just was like, oh my gosh, this is the community. These are the people. This is what I've been looking for. And I had to jump in and start teaching right away and, learn as I went along, but I instantly fell in love with it. And what I noticed is that women were staying after my class. And it was that one-on-one connection, that deeper connection that I really loved. I loved teaching the poses, and I loved teaching people how to shut off the world for that 1 hour. I loved creating that meditative space for people. But I especially loved getting to know the women and their stories and their struggles. And so that's kind of where I started learning about life coaching, because that's kind of what I was doing in my classes. Women would stay after just to talk. And I noticed that people really told me stuff. And that's always been my nature, is people will always say, I've never told anyone this, and I really appreciate that about what I offer for women, is that safe space to be themselves, and I want them to feel comfortable. And so that kind of grew out of my yoga teaching. And then when I became a mom, I didn't want to be bound to a studio and a class every other day. And so I started teaching online, and that's what led me to what I do now.
Can you tell us about what you do now?
Yeah, so the quick version is I could not stand putting my son into daycare, and so I wanted to find a way where I could work from home. And we did some juggling. We sold a car. We got frugal. We learned how to budget. We did things to make it work, because that's what you have to do on a one-income family, as so many of you know. And it was scary. It was scary to leave my job and to do something different, but I started a class online called Inside Out, a creative adventure of self-discovery. And my first class, I put it out there. I had just started blogging. I've just learned what Twitter was. I thought if I got 10 people in my class, then I will do this class. And what the class is it started out as I think it was 31 days of self-reflection using yoga, guided meditation, art journaling, and connecting to a community. And so each day, the participants would get prompts that would be a daily reflection, and it was all about going inside, learning how to connect to yourself, using the tool of creativity. Because I really see that creativity is like your gateway to your intuition. When you make space to do something that gets you into the present moment, your mind can start to relax. Your mind starts to say, I can be a little less anxiety ridden right now. I can soften. I can just be a little quieter. And that's when the messages in your heart start to come up. And it's that daily, weekly practice through art journaling and the philosophy of yoga and guided meditation that really started to have an impact on people. So my first class, I thought if I had 10 people, I'll do it. The very first email I got was this woman in India. And she said, can I take your class? I wasn't sure if it was just for US students. And I literally hadn't even thought of that. Like, this was so new to me. And really, there weren't a lot of e-courses at this time. This was about, 7 years ago at least now. And I had to figure it out. I'm like, okay, I don't know, but yes, I think we can. And, I had to learn PayPal, and I just learned as I went along. And then I had 72 people sign up for that first class. So it was an indicator to me that this was a need. And since then, I've offered it to hundreds of women from all over the world. I continue to get emails from women who've changed their lives because they learned what I have learned, what I am learning, which is how to trust themselves, how to believe in themselves again, and how to, manifest that and stay connected to their inner courage so they can bring their dreams out into the world. And that's what I do with A Free Spirit Life. It's all online. I do coaching and e-courses. And I'm just starting this new monthly program. It's called the Live Freely Circle. And it's kind of a monthly support group online, but it's a place where you can get weekly inspiration, creative inspiration on how to live an authentic life. And so that's what I do online now, and I'm obsessed with it.
I'm obsessed with it too. I'm so excited, and I'm excited for everything that we're doing together and how we can bring what we're already doing just into a completely different platform. And I could just talk to you all day, but I thank you for sharing everything with me about your life. And of course, as we go on, you're going to just learn more and more about what Shannon and I both do. And you'll all have opportunities, especially on our Facebook group, to ask questions. Like after you've listened to these podcasts, we would love to hear more questions about what you've learned and what you've heard from us. And a very big thanks to you, Shannon.
Thank you, Ash. It was really fun, and I just love what we're doing and can't wait to do more.
I can't wait to do more.
Sometimes I close my eyes, I don't want to show. I sit up